I'm a national organizing specialist at the ACLU on the organizing team, leading the national volunteer texting team. And I am based in Orlando, Florida. And I would love for my co-facilitators to also introduce themselves. Barrington, go ahead and take it away.
Hi, everybody. Barrington Gore. I use he, him as pronouns. I'm based in San Francisco, California. I'm a senior regional organizing director at the ACLU, and I work with our ACLU affiliates in the western part of the country on organizing and political programs. Rakeem.
Everybody, nice to see you again for the 5th of these action series. I've been present at 4 out of the 5. I'm good to be here again. Rakeem Brooks, I use he, him, his pronouns. My location is currently Washington, D.C., and as you know, I am a senior campaign strategist at the ACLU and the Systemic Equality Campaign Manager, specifically overseeing our child tax credit work, among other things. So wonderful to be here with you again tonight.
Thank you, Rakeem and Barrington. So many of you have been introducing yourselves in the chat as you join, but if you haven't gotten the chance to, please feel free to go ahead and share your name, your pronouns, and the location that you're joining us from in the chat now. So, all right, thank you to everyone once again for joining us tonight. I'm gonna go ahead and pass it over to Rakeem and Senator Booker.
Great, thank you, Maddie. Really appreciate it. Again, Senator Booker, it's really a pleasure to have you here tonight. We know that you and your colleagues, Senator Michael Bennett and Senator Sherrod Brown, have really been leading the charge in this effort, and so we're very grateful to have you present with us. I thought where I'd start is, we use these action series as an occasion to educate our members broadly about a particular issue and then help them to take action on it. Bearing to start off at the top, I want to make a slight correction that it's basically 1 in 7 children are currently in poverty. And then if we count near poverty and so forth, it gets much larger, but that's roughly 14%. But I wondered if you could just tell the audience what the child tax credit is, what just happened in the American Relief Act that changed the child tax credit, and how we're seeking to make that change permanent, why we're seeking to make it permanent.
So our tax system has a lot of issues that we all should be concerned about, issues of justice. We spend over $600 billion every year giving tax breaks to people with money, or giving them what's called tax expenditures. For example, the mortgage interest deduction, something I support, but is overwhelmingly used by the wealthiest in this country. We had about 2 decades ago, the child tax credit was created. Again, low-income people, working class people should have similar types of tax benefits. And this was this idea that if you had kids, that you could get a tax credit that could give you some money back to help your family work. And over time, Congress has tried to step this up a little bit, but we know that the child tax credit could actually be a powerful tool in empowering working families and in lifting children out of poverty. And so, as you said, Senators Brown, Bennett, and myself really joined with Kamala Harris when she was in the Senate, put forward a big, bold plan to actually put ourselves in line with many other industrial countries by having a refundable child tax credit, which I'll explain in a second, that really empowered families. Because the way the tax credit was structured, it was sort of if you owed a lot of taxes, you could get a tax credit. The problem is the lowest working Americans didn't qualify for the full tax credit. And so we wanted to make it fully refundable, so no matter what your income scale, you were going to get that money back, like the earned income tax credit. You would get checks. And so what our bill did was dramatically increase the child tax credit for the youngest children from $2,000 up to $3,600, made it fully refundable. So even if you were a working minimum wage, trying to raise a child, now you would get that full $3,600 back. In addition to that, we wanted to make sure that it was monthly installments so that you wouldn't have to wait until the end of the year, file your taxes and all of that. And so now, if we could fully expand this benefit to all children, 17 and under, it would have a powerful effect. It would only affect families for a single parent, $75,000 or less, a couple hundred, for a married couple, $150,000. And so we got this into the American Rescue Plan, which is extraordinary. it means that about 90% of American children will be in a family that gets something back from our expanded child tax credit, which is really epic. And then you add to that the fact that for the first time ever, the lowest income folks will be eligible for the full tax credit, which will come to them monthly. So this fully refundable tax credit, unfortunately, it's just for a year. It was not expanded. But for the year, what it's going to do is it's going to virtually cut child poverty in America in half by making these benefits so accessible. Low-income families, working-class families are at or below the poverty line are going to see a massive increase that's going to get them over the poverty line. And so the mission that I have with a number of my colleagues is to make this permanent. So we can say this will be the biggest reduction in child poverty in America by any president ever. FDR, Lyndon Johnson, no one cut child poverty as much as we could if we were able to make this permanent. It would be incredible for our nation.
Thank you for that overview, and I think it underscores the importance of this issue. Partially why the ACLU is invested. I mean, as you began talking, we were sort of describing the economics of it, which is not a traditional place in which the ACLU engages, but we do often and have historically engaged on racial justice. So if you could just spend a few minutes talking about the racial justice implications of the child tax credit, I would appreciate it. You already alluded to it in talking about its effects on child poverty, but I wondered if you could offer some more.
Well, look, Black and brown children are disproportionately poor. It's similar to that. We know there's a massive wealth gap in this country. The average white family has about 10 times the wealth of the average Black family. And so this move alone would cut Latino children's poverty by about 50%, Black children's poverty by close to 60%, and Native American poverty by over 60%. And so with it affecting all children, but it will have a disproportionate impact on lifting children of color above the poverty line. And now look, we know this horrible pandemic really exposed the fragilities in our country. And what is challenging is that our country not only has fragility when it comes to our medical systems, our food systems, but a lot of our fragility lies in the shocking outlier that the United States is amongst developed nations with such staggeringly high levels of poverty. Now, and I want to be very clear, poverty is violence. Child poverty is violence, obscene violence, that a nation that purports that everyone should have a fair shot would have children in poverty because we know that it robs children of opportunity. And so we've made a lot of efforts to try to deal with racial issues in this country, but Black, Latinx children are still about 3 times as likely as white children to be living in poverty. And we know when I say that it's violence, I'm not exaggerating. That's not a figure of speech. If you analyze the brains of poor children, you literally see all those brain chemicals, cortisol, fear, pumping. It's almost the akin as one social scientist said is as an adult having a car accident every single day. And it actually erodes the development of the brain of our children. And so we know that as a result of the stressors of child poverty, a child's whole lifetime is affected. Kids in poverty have worse health outcomes, more visits to the emergency room. They have worse education outcomes. They're more likely to be entrapped in our savagely broken criminal justice system. And kids who grew up in poverty are more likely to be in poverty as adults. And so we know that when a child experiences poverty, these are the lifelong psychological, economic, and health effects are going to be with them. Study after study has borne this out. Again, poverty is violence, obscene violence in a nation that purports its values. But when you see the poverty of empathy and understanding, we have the capacity to change this, but we're not. And it has deep effects in cementing racial differences. A child starting out in poverty, more likely to be in poverty. So breaking these stratifications amongst a race are just not happening. And the one thing I want to finally say is we know that to close the wealth gap in our country, it is going to be very difficult if we don't start having programs that are addressing struggling families. I have a lot of them we could talk about in other calls, but when I sat with my colleagues, Kamala Harris and I talked, of all the things that Congress is working on right now, when it comes to the reality of the numbers of kids, Black and brown kids in poverty, and what it means to lift them above it, this is probably, when it comes to racial equity, one of the greatest things that we could do for the Black community, for the Latinx community, for the Native American community.
Couldn't agree more. Certainly from the ACLU's perspective, this is, as you said, as the possibility of being the greatest piece of social legislation passed since the 1960s, if we can indeed make the enhancements permanent. You laid out some of the comparisons between the United States and other countries, and what we like to do to keep our audience members engaged is sometimes launch polls where we quiz them. So everybody get their pencils out, or just pay attention to your screen. And the question is, how many US children do you believe are living in poverty today? Got 316 people. They're moving quickly.
This is impressive to watch this in real time. Can we take a poll later about what I should eat before I go to bed, or should I just
I'll give it a few more seconds. Well, people are very enthusiastic about your presence. I haven't been telling you about what's come up in the chat, but they say you are a champion for working people and for the commoner. That was my favorite.
I appreciate that. That's really kind of folks. We need a lot more kindness in these days, and so thank you for encouraging me.
Definitely do. Well, let's stop it here. The winning result was 12 million. The actual stat is around closer to 10 million, but that's based on our, I believe, our 2019 statistics, and really doesn't take into account the effects of COVID. And so I'm going to give the people who said 12 million the mark.
Kim, I just want to jump in. I know this is not my place, but the way that the United States measures the poverty line is really broken as well.
Absolutely.
It does not really include what it takes for a family to be making a living wage and more. So if you talk about people who are not making a living wage in America, you're going to get a lot more than 12 million families who are really struggling out there.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. For those who don't know, the original poverty measure was based on nutritious diet, when Americans spent about a third of their income on that diet. Today, Americans spend roughly an eighth of their income on a nutritious diet, and yet we haven't really adjusted that poverty statistics. So, Senator Booker, you're entirely right, and thank you for pointing that out. A question we sort of had, which you've alluded to as well, in terms of comparing the United States to other countries, is how did we get here to a point where the United States seems to be so lax about so many of its citizens living in poverty, particularly as children? And why did we sort of land on $3,000 and $3,600? The effects are dramatic in the way that you've described, but what were you thinking the impact would be in the lives of ordinary Americans if we could do this?
Yeah, to your first question, I don't, it's difficult for me to see the patent injustices in our country. And you ask why? Why do we have a nation where there's over 3,000 jurisdictions where children have more than twice the blood lead levels of Flint, Michigan? Literally, we are sitting by while children every day are being poisoned. Why is there no moral outcry when our jails are full of nonviolent drug offenders and Blacks are 4 times more likely to be incarcerated? In fact, people tell me, oh, marijuana legalization. I just shake my head. I want to legalize marijuana, but please let's talk about the destruction of the drug war. And in 2019, there was more marijuana arrests than all the violent crime arrests combined for possession. I could go on with the outrages in our country. And so the question to me isn't why are they existing? It's why aren't we doing more about it? I am literally sitting here as the 4th Black person ever elected to the United States Senate because of people like I served with. John Lewis was willing not to stand around and simply ask why, but more like, what can I do? How can I change this? And so I just think we need a higher level of activism, more courageous love in our country to stop asking simply why, but dedicating ourselves to changing it. And I know that I'm on a call preaching to the choir, because if you remember the ACLU, you're almost fundamentally wired to this. But I sometimes despair. I have to be honest with you, and I'm tired from a long week of trying to wrestle to get policing reform passed in the United States Senate. But I love when I come home to this. I'm the only senator that lives in a Black and brown low income neighborhood, but we don't mistake wealth with worth where I live. Even though the median income, the last census was $14,000 where I live. Some of my greatest heroes are here. And there was a woman named Miss Jones. We named the street after her. She's now passed away. She used to be the tenant president of the projects that I lived in for about 8 years. I'll never forget, her son was murdered in the building which I would eventually move into. And this idea of despairing and asking why. And I remember asking her why she still lived in the buildings, why she was still the tenant president. And she goes, why? She goes, because I am in charge of Homeland Security. You know, she like never had this sense that she wasn't responsible. She took responsibility. She couldn't change the world, but she could make a world of difference to the people who lived in those projects. She was the toughest, strongest, most courageous, loving person I ever met. She actually taught me on moments like this when I'm dead tired and frustrated. She taught me that hope is the active conviction that despair will never have the last word. So I can't tell you my sociological, historical perspective of why we became the country, the developed country with the highest poverty rates, but I can damn well be sure that I can try to take more responsibility for it, and I hope that you will too. Bennett, Brown, Harris, and myself tried to set a number that was both achievable, but that would be dramatic and bold in its change. It's not the only thing we've done on poverty. I put forward a bill called baby bonds, that every child in America should be born with $1,000 in an interest-bearing account for them. And they should get more money placed in that account depending on their family's income, all the way to 18, upwards of $2,000 a year. The lowest income kids in our country would have over about $50,000 in that bank account, baby bonds. We've been trying to get people left and right to get on my bill. We finally got some big names in the Senate. That could deal a lot with the wealth gap in America. There's not going to be one lever we pull that's going to end poverty in our country, but the wealthiest nation in the world, there should be fundamental rights: clean water, clean air, health care. And you aren't in poverty. You have a fair shot. So I appreciate the questions, but I know that behind the questions is a conviction. And I'm excited about this call for that reason, because this is a small window. These windows open every once in a while. Blip, blip, the last minute. I'm sorry, that's my sound effects. It's just terrible. I hope you are recording this, so please don't play that part. But the last window we had was way back in 2008 when Barack Obama first came in. He only lasted 2 years. Remember, he lost his majorities in 2010. I think he said he got shellacked was the word he used. And then that window closed to get any profound legislation through. We still have the struggle with this thing called the filibuster, which I would like to see reformed or eliminated. So we have this window right now. This is a powerful window that we could probably punch this through. And that's why I'm hoping that we all engage in this struggle.
Thank you for that. And many of our members, some probably assembled here tonight, have already attempted to show their support for the enhanced child tax credit, making it permanent by calling their senators to get them to sign on to the letter that you, Senator Brown, Senator Bennett, circulated with your colleagues in advance to the White House. And so I know that there are many people here who've already committed themselves to that different vision of the future that you've described. I wondered, one of the things we're going to have here tonight, my colleagues Maddie and Barrington will lead later, is describing actions that people can take to try and move the remaining members of the Senate who haven't signed on in the Democratic caucus, and some of the Republican members who might sign on. But I wondered if you could talk just a little bit about how hearing from constituents can actually be impactful in this crusade to permanently reduce child poverty in America.
Well, I've seen it in my life, in the Senate, 7 years. And I've seen how people lobbying and calling and taking lots of actions actually makes a difference. So I confess to you all, after I just said those words about despair, I was despairing of the Affordable Care Act. I thought it was, I counted votes. I didn't think we were going to be able to turn it around. But heroes descended on the Capitol, filled phones up so much that people couldn't even use them. The lobbying that was done, the activism that was made manifest, changed some Republicans' minds, and we saved the Affordable Care Act. If you look at history, it wasn't a bunch of men in the 1900s that came together on the Senate floor and said, "Hey, fellas, let's give women the right to vote." It just didn't happen that way. It happened because of incredible activism. You sure well know that it wasn't one day that Strom Thurmond came to the Senate floor and said, "You know what? I think those Negro people should have some rights." No. It was activism. There's an old saying that change doesn't come from Washington, it comes to Washington. And so senators pay attention to the public. It's what a politician does. And when you let your voices be heard and they're joined with a chorus of others, a chorus of conviction, I'm telling you right now, it makes a difference. It's not in vain. In fact, nothing ever that's done in the cause of righteousness and justice is ever in vain, no matter how small. It makes a difference. And even if you don't win that day, I think about John Lewis trying to cross that Edmund Pettus Bridge and getting driven back, beaten viciously and driven back. That day, there was a lawyer in New Jersey, a white guy on a couch 1,000 miles away, who was so moved by that he decided to give an hour of pro bono legal work to the Fair Housing Council in New Jersey that was struggling to get Black families into white neighborhoods in New Jersey. And 4 years after that, he got a case filed, this family coming from the South who had been turned away house after house after house in neighborhoods in northern New Jersey with some of the best public schools. And he represented that family. And through a large bit of activism, including a lawyer and that family getting attacked physically, they moved them into the house as the first Black family in this neighborhood. And that family was my family. I am here because that white guy on a couch watching a failed march that got driven back was so inspired and so moved from. So you never know when you stand up and fight it just sends out ripples of possibility that change lives. And so, God, if you had a chance, a window to think about this, if we get this done, think about your activism, what it might create. You never know what child that was lifted above the poverty line, that had more security, what their brain could do. I mean, the greatest natural resource any country has is the genius of children, and genius is equally distributed in every area of our country. As many geniuses born in Newark as in Beverly Hills per capita, for sure. And so that person might go on to be an incredible doctor, public school teacher, because of a policy that many people might find arcane. It's just not sexy to say the child tax credit. Doesn't sound, but I'm telling you right now, your efforts in this cause will be one of the biggest things any Congress has ever accomplished if we can get this done.
Well, it seems so mundane to go from from that exhortation to action to just a sort of practical question I think our members would like to know, which is, people are in the process of filing their taxes. For parents out there who have children, when do you think they can expect to receive this credit and start to have, so it can have a real impact in their lives?
So I just talked to the Secretary of Treasury days ago. She understands the urgency of this and delivering these payments monthly starting in July. And I'm very happy about that. So the IRS will make these payments, again, based on your most recent tax returns. So make sure you file before the extended May 17th deadline if you haven't already. And again, you can get more information. There's tons of information about how to file your taxes for free, very simply. One of the most simple domains I've ever heard of, irs.gov. And you can get a lot of information about this. Somebody write that in the chat for me, irs.gov. Not that you need to write it down, but it is, I bet you there's a lot. I mean, I had this conversation today, so frustrating, with a person of significant means. And I asked them, you know, there's such a warped sense for some people about what the median income in our country is that they just didn't realize that to them it's like so low, they can't even imagine they make that kind of money. The stratifications of wealth in this country are incredible. Most families are going to qualify for this tax credit. So if you needed that information, this is what I'm going to ask you, maybe something different. Don't go to irs.gov simply. If you needed the information I just gave you, share it with somebody else because they're going to need it too. You know, we tweet out, including me, lots of trivialities. I've been known to put more than one picture of my vegan food that I eat on there. But post tonight, post up something about letting people know about how they can get their money, because most of the people we know are going to qualify for the child tax credit if they have kids. And then, by the way, part of our effort is the earned income tax credit too, which we successfully for 1 year lowered the age eligibility down to 18 and expanded it upwards and made more people qualify, got a much more generous earned income tax credit for single people who are working. So in this, there's a lot of resources that you can find out about irs.gov, but don't just take something for yourself. When you get wisdom, knowledge, share that, and you help goodness, kindness go viral.
Yeah, Senator Booker, we know how many different things you're working on. I've been keeping track of your Black Farmers Justice Act, which is something that the ACLU may take an interest in, and similarly the American Opportunities Accounts. So we just thank you for constantly standing up for people and standing up for civil rights and civil liberties. Is there anything else that you'd like to say to our audience about the child tax credit and trying our fight to make it permanent, make the enhancements permanent?
I have lost a lot of children in my community, in my neighborhood. There are so many challenges out here for our children. Here where I sit in the Central Ward, we got a Superfund site a mile or so that way. We just had a lead crisis in Newark. I can't tell you how many funerals I've been where we put Black boys in boxes. We've made a lot of difference in my city. I'm so proud of my current mayor and the efforts we're doing. We brought supermarkets into food deserts, reentry program. We're doing a lot, but we're still struggling. A city can't do it all on itself. And so we're not alone. You go across the country, there are communities like mine that have been redlined, that have been discriminated against, disinvested in, that have all these hazards put in them. We've got incinerators put in our community, highways, giving kids 4 times the asthma rates. Our children have so many challenges in the United States of America, the wealthiest country on the planet Earth. And so I know what Frederick Douglass says. It's one of the greatest truisms of a man who fought against slavery. He just said that if without struggle, there will be no progress. And so I just hope we can all be in struggle together because we need each other. We are so interdependent. We are so interconnected. We are so intersectional. What you do affects me. And I'm telling you right now, I'm tired of seeing so many kids shot. I'm tired of watching my children deal with crises, not of their own making, that just shouldn't have to be in a nation this great and this wealthy. And so our ancestors struggled and fought and protested. I like Zin's book about a people's history of this country. Every step of the way, every inch of ground had to be gained through work. And so my hope tonight is, in the name of love, the greatest of all human ideals, which is not sentimentality, it is sacrifice, it is struggle, it is often having your heart broken. In fact, I think if your heart's never been broken by this nation, you don't love it enough. But yet broken hearts still function. So please do everything you can on this one. If we can win this one, I hope you won't see it because it's ugly, but I'll do my happy dance for a long time because the Senate floor will finally have done something that is epic. We should do more epic things, but this, if we get this one to be epic. So thank you tonight for indulging me and having me with you and being a part of a community. We need to create more beloved communities like this one, where we have each other's best interests, have each other's back, and have righteous ambitions. I'm going to leave you now and go sit with Rachel for a while. Let me tell you, man, Rachel's not a great bold black man like you. So, I just want to give you some love for the similarity. I know you grew the beard out because you didn't want people to mistake us. But I'm just so grateful. I love everybody here, and I hope and pray for our victory. And even if we don't get it, what do? We don't stop. As a great Black poet said, you can face many defeats, but you must never be defeated. So thank you.
Yeah, really appreciate it. I did grow out the beard because people said the Yale Law School Rhodes Scholar overlap was too much to bear.
Yes, sir.
Well, we, again, Senator Booker, appreciate your time. We know how busy you are, but this is, as I said, one of the most critically important issues of our time, probably the most important piece of social legislation since the Civil Rights Movement, since the 1960s, rather. And so just appreciate your being in the vanguard along with Senators Bennett and Brown and guiding us towards hopefully higher heights. And we look forward as the ACLU, alongside our people power activists, trying to make the permanent expansion of the tax credit a reality. So please enjoy the rest of your evening. And I'm going to pass it back to Maddie now, who's going to tell our wonderful activists how to get involved.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Senator Booker, and thank you, Rakeem. Thank y'all for your time. So now that we've had a chance to learn a bit more about how life-changing this simple tax credit can be for children and families, particularly Black, Latinx, and Indigenous children, we want to talk about what we can do to take action and get our senators to support making this tax credit permanent. So I want to hear a bit more from folks in the audience. So if you currently or previously have had kids at home, how could $3,600 a year be a game changer for you? That's an easy question for a lot of us, but we'd love to hear from you. We talked earlier about those unexpected expenses and costs of raising a family. So using the chat function, please go ahead and chime in if you'd like to share with us how an extra $3,600 can help you provide for your children, or how it would have helped you when your children were young, or how it could help your grandchildren, or if you don't have children, how could it help your friends and family and other people in your community? I saw a lot of people mention food, which is such a great point. Definitely the college fund is very impactful. I'm looking at new family vehicle. I'm looking at childcare, clothing, just like basic and essential things. So amazing points, y'all, and thank you for sharing your stories. I want to go ahead and share one more story now. We have a video that we'd love to play for you if we can go ahead and get that started.
Hi, I'm Rachel.
Hi, I'm Nick.
And we are new parents. Our baby girl just turned 1. She actually is asleep now, just had bedtime. You can hear the baby monitor in the background. So we are definitely in the mindset of being in favor of a child tax credit for her, obviously as new parents. And I think just any parent wants every opportunity for their child. But I think that also our values are, we want all children to be treated equally, have equal opportunity in the society, and to feel as though society values them. And a child tax credit would really, transform our country into one that we're proud to raise our child in. Do you want to add anything on?
Yeah, I think it's important that the child tax credit, it's a benefit for the child, not the parent. Children, just like any human, they need resources to survive, and they need money to buy those resources. Children can't work, they shouldn't work, and they don't get to choose who their parents are. They can't guarantee their parents will have the resources to take care of them. So it's life-saving that every child could get the benefits that they need to survive, and not just survive, but thrive. So we are grateful that the existing child tax credit, which was recently expanded, exists. We hope that it's made permanent, and we hope it's made stronger so that truly every child gets it. Right now, as great as it is, the way it's administered kind of guarantees that a large percentage of the poorest children won't get it because they don't sign up, they're not aware of the benefit. And there's obvious ways that could be fixed to ensure that all children get it. And we really hope that's done.
So call your senators today. We'll be calling ours in support of the child tax credit.
Yeah, right.
Hi, I'm Rachel.
Awesome. Thank you, Marissa, for your help sharing that video. And thank you to Rachel and Nick for sharing their story. What we want to do is flood the inboxes of senators with video testimonials, just like Rachel's. And we need y'all to share your story with us as well. So how will an extra $3,600 change your life as a parent? How will it improve your ability to provide for your children? As we know, tax season is just wrapping up and many families will be getting relief very soon. So we need to seize the moment to tell the story about how this relief is impacting families all across America and why it needs to be permanent if we want to meaningfully reduce child poverty for good. If we don't act swiftly, we risk making these credits a one-time thing and going back to the status quo of millions in poverty that disproportionately impacts children of color. Taking a huge step forward toward ending child poverty only to once again see child poverty rates this high in our nation is simply not acceptable. And we need to make that very clear. Our ACLU activist community is central to making the child tax credit permanent in 2021. As Senator Booker mentioned earlier, sharing your personal story as a constituent is a great way to move your US Senator to take a stance on this. That's why we're asking each and every one of you to commit to sharing your story. Creating a testimonial is simple, but really, really important. And we really want to provide you with all the tools you need to be successful. So we need everyone joining us tonight, whether you are a parent of young children or adult children, or you have friends and family members raising children, or you just feel personally compelled to end child poverty in this country, we need you to submit a video testimonial and share it far and wide. There's an opportunity for everyone to contribute here. In the testimonial is just like the sample video, make sure to include your first name, where you're from, how an extra $3,600 will impact your ability to provide for your children, or how it would have helped you when your children are young, how it can help your grandchildren, children in your family or community, etc. And ask your senators by name to publicly support making the enhanced child tax credit permanent. And remember to keep it short if possible. Your video should be less than 2 minutes. So we're gonna go ahead and launch a poll here for y'all to kind of get your engagement and find out from you directly, will you commit to recording a message for your senator? Very simple. We'll give y'all a minute or two to go ahead and submit your responses. And again, as Senator Booker mentioned, it's so cool to see these mentioned, to see these live results pop up. This is awesome. So thank y'all so much. We're already seeing a lot of yeses roll in, and we're so grateful for each and every one of you who are committing. We can't wait to see your videos. Again, while it's normal to have a lot to say, try your best to keep your testimonial to 1 to 2 minutes by focusing on what's most important for you to express. And I will go ahead and pass it off to Barrington.
All right. Thank you, Maddie. Thank you to Senator Booker for joining us. I think he really, the urgency of this is extremely important. He mentioned that 2008 was the last time that we had the chance to pass legislation like this. That's been 13 years ago. So let's not let this opportunity slip away. We're talking about bringing millions and millions of children out of poverty. So a really important conversation tonight. We're going to follow up with everyone first thing tomorrow morning with an email reminder for the instructions and a link on how to submit a video in case you're not able to capture it here. Before I move into the question and answer session that's coming up next, I just want to take a moment to preview our next Systemic Equality Action session. As a quick review, the Systemic Equality Agenda is an ACLU racial justice agenda. We are seeking to address the legacy of racism and systemic discrimination that exists in our country. As shown on our slide here, the platform includes protecting and expanding voting rights, expanding access to financial services, student loan debt cancellation, which we talked about last week, establishing a permanent child tax credit, which we talked about tonight, of course. Next week, we're going to talk about advancing fair and affordable housing. We'll also talk about expanding access to broadband. And then our final session, we're going to talk about passing legislation on reparations. This is just a start. We're considering many other issues. We are looking at marijuana justice, banking, State Civil Rights Act, guaranteed counsel on disputes that involve human dignity, like eviction proceedings, where I know we've already had some successes in several states. To achieve this, really long-term ambitious goals of this campaign, we have to organize for equality on every level. And that's really only possible if every single person who's passionate about this takes on leadership. That's why we're so grateful to have you and several ACLU leaders here tonight. For each issue in our systemic equality agenda, we're hosting one of these action series like this one to help you get more familiar with the issues. I'm sure a lot of folks have come to many of the previous action sessions. This platform is important to help you gain the skills you need to take meaningful and strategic action with us. It's great if you're able to attend the webinars. We really push you to actually complete the actions, taking the time to shoot a minute or two video to send it to your senator. Senator Booker talked about during the healthcare debate, people actually going to the Capitol and meeting with their legislators. Obviously, for multiple reasons, that's not something that we're able to do right now. So taking the time to record a video, 1 to 2 minutes, talking about how this can impact your family, talking about how it could impact your community. We need our senators to see our faces and to recognize that, this is, our window is tight here, right? So we are asking everybody to take action. These action sessions take place every 2 weeks through the end of May. The next one is going to be on May 8th, and we'll be discussing the importance of equitable access to housing and broadband services, as I mentioned earlier. Please take a moment to RSVP right now. We're going to go ahead and put the link in the chat, Marissa. And if folks would like a recording of any of the previous sessions, you can email us at info@peoplepower.org. Our volunteer team there will answer your email. We can send you any of those recordings your way. We'll have a recording of this one eventually. And like I said, we'll send out an email to everybody tomorrow with more follow-up logistics from tonight. All right. So we're going to go to a question and answer session, and I'll pass it back over to Maddie.
Thank you very much, Barrington. So before we wrap up, we want to go ahead and take a few minutes to answer any questions you might have about the Systemic Equality campaign or the child tax credit. You can use the Q&A function at the bottom of your Zoom screen to submit your questions. You can check send anonymously if you don't want your name attached in the Q&A. And we'll also keep an eye out in the chat if you prefer to ask a question that way. And I'll give you all a couple minutes to throw some questions in. I've seen a couple come in already. So we'll scroll through and look at the questions that y'all got. Give me 1 second.
I noticed someone in the chat saying that they might not be able, looks like Carol, not being able to provide a video, but could send an email or write a letter to your senator. Of course, any form of communication with the Senate on this issue is extraordinarily useful. And so everyone should use the means best available to them. We've suggested video because, as you know, during this action series, we try to train you on different tactics and skills. And so this was the one that we chose for this evening. And Carol, you could think about, just as a throwback to our last action series on student debt, you could write a letter to the editor on this issue, if this is in fact something that you're passionate about. So you're not limited just to communicating directly with your senator, of course.
And then I also saw a question about somebody who I think was in California who asked, if I live in a blue state, should I still reach out to my senator? And I would say absolutely yes. With whatever means you're able to, whether it's a video like we discussed tonight, a call, an email, you should reach out to your senator. This is not necessarily a red and blue issue. There's lots of folks on both sides of the aisle who have not taken a firm position yet. So we need everybody to reach out to their senator, regardless of whether you're in a red state or a blue state. So.
And Barrington, if I could just build off of that, somebody also spoke to the experience of being in a state where they didn't feel as though their representatives would hear them out. And I just have to say, even if you do not think that your representative will support the enhanced child tax credit, hearing from you gums up the works. If they are having their offices inundated with calls and emails, it inhibits their ability to do other things that they are prioritizing. So I just want you to know it's not just like a win or a lose, they'll do it or they won't do it. It's about showing them that people are paying attention and making it inconvenient for them to not support what you want to support. So I just want to say that don't view it as like, I can only do this if I think that my senator will actually support it. Your voice will make a difference, even if it's not in such a dramatic way.
I noticed two other questions in the chat. I'm sorry, Maddie, at any point take over and let me know if there are other questions we should answer, but they were sort of more technical ones. So one was, is there a bill currently under consideration? The answer to that is no. As Senator Booker underscored, the current enhanced child tax credit is set to expire next year. What is currently in discussion is an extension of that child tax credit. The president's opening bid, it seems, might be until 2025. And we, of course, would like for the child tax credit to be permanent, which in very technical terms means 10 years and renewable for 10 years every cycle thereafter. But nevertheless, we're just talking about in terms of we might as well go the full distance now as opposed to taking a half measure.
And I also saw that a few folks were asking about a specific bill number. So there's not a specific bill right now. We anticipate that this may be part of the infrastructure package. So there's not a specific bill number to lobby on at this point. So.
Very good. I can start going through Maddie, did you want to read the questions that you thought were important, or I can go through them?
I actually would like to highlight one. So there's one that says, is there any concern about unhoused people not being able to get this credit? If people are in poverty, how many of them are filing taxes, i.e. how many of them exist in the system and can actually take advantage of this credit?
Yes, this has been a tremendous concern of the advocacy community in terms of making sure that the credit reaches the most vulnerable. The answer to that right now is that we don't have a good answer. There was a proposal to effectively have the Social Security Administration administer the credit. That's not ultimately the way that we went with the one-year credit. It could be something in terms of implementation for the permanent credit. But yes, folks are working on that actively to figure out how exactly to do this. And of course, there are people who don't want to file their taxes for other reasons that they're concerned about their data being compromised, their identities being revealed and so forth, and being forced to be engaged with the government that way. So we're on it, but don't have a great solution for it yet. I just noticed two other questions that are just straight technical questions I can answer quickly. So it's $3,000 per child over the age of 6 and $3,600 per child under the age of 6.
Thank you very much, Rakeem. There was another question that asked where to send the videos. So we actually, Barrington, if you want to take this one, we actually, I believe, have a link for that.
Yeah, we have an action page. I believe we may have dropped the link in the chat earlier, but we will, as we send the follow-up email to all the attendees, you'll have a link to that action page. It will just ask for some basic information, name, location, zip code. We'll ask for your state. And then there will be a drag and drop or a box where you can put a link and you can upload your video there. And then we'll ask you to look over some legal language and just check it to make sure that we are able to actually have your consent to use your video. So Lisa just put it in the chat there. It's that go.peoplepower.org link.
Alrighty, so we'll just take this final question, if that's all right. So the last one says, in this first year of the tax credit, what kind of evidence will you be able to collect quickly enough to influence votes on making the child tax credit permanent?
Could you read it one more time, Maddie? I'm sorry. What kind of evidence will you collect?
Sure. Yeah. In the first year of the tax credit, what kind of evidence will you be able to collect quickly enough to influence votes on making the tax credit permanent?
Oh, I see what you mean. There's a kind of sequencing problem. I assume what the person is asking is, how will you be able to document the effect of the tax credit such that it becomes compelling enough to move forward with making it permanent? There'll necessarily be a lag, but that's part of what this part of this action series and why we're asking you to submit these stories, right? So as individuals, as Americans come forward and identify exactly how the tax credit has affected them personally, that will be the best documentary evidence we have of its overall impact in their lives. My little sister, for example, has 5 children. I can tell you that they are very expensive and that this tax credit is going to mean quite a lot to her. And so we want people like her and people like you to give voice to that experience and the difference that it makes in your lives.
Thank you so much, Rakeem. And thank you all for your thoughtful questions. We really appreciate your input. Before we transition, I want to go ahead and reiterate how important it is to lift families out of poverty and expand the child tax credit, and that achieving this is a time-sensitive task. We have a truly unique, once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to show our senators that this is not a COVID-19 specific issue. Child poverty is a systemic form of oppression that can and needs to be eradicated. If we don't act swiftly, once again, we risk making these credits a one-time thing when there is no reason for us to revert back to having over 36% of children living in poverty. If you're talking to folks about what you learned tonight, just remember this. There are over 12 million American children in poverty, mostly children of color, and it doesn't have to be that way. Making the child tax credit permanent provides food, shelter, clothing for kids, and peace of mind for families all across the country, and reduce child poverty by 40% or more. It could have the same impact on the lives of children that Social Security had on seniors. The issue areas we aim to tackle through the Systemic Equality Campaign are symptoms of the same problem: institutional and structural racism. That's why we need you to commit to joining us for the entire action series. The next action series on access to fair housing and broadband will be held on May 8th at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. So make sure you're getting emails from People Power and look out for an email from us on that session. Thank you all so much once again for your time this evening. We are so tremendously grateful for the leadership of our volunteer-driven ACLU community. And I am completely sincere when I say that this work simply cannot be done without the incredible team of activists that we are so lucky to have. We look forward to working together in building a nation where every single person can achieve their highest potential, unhampered by structural and institutional racism. With that, we're going to go ahead and close out the evening. Please
Maddie,
keep an eye out on your inbox. Sorry, go ahead.
Real quick, May 6th is our next action series, May 6th.
Sorry, May 6th. Thank you.
All good.
May 6th,
There's
everyone.
some very smart volunteers who caught that, so thank you for popping it in the chat.
They were sharp.
Nice, y'all.
They
Good
know why
looking
they
out. Thank you.
spend their Thursday evenings.
Every Thursday. Well, fantastic. So we'll see y'all again on May 6th. Please keep an eye on your inbox for the resources and the next steps from our team to record those videos or reach out to your senators. And if any other questions pop up for you, please feel free to shoot us an email at info@peoplepower.org. Thanks again, everyone, and have a wonderful night. Thank you so much for your time.
Much appreciated. See everyone soon.